Colonel Azan was standing in a waiting area for a flight to the central head shed, as she called it. This is where the generals lived, worked, and directed the war and each battle in safety. Colonel, your grav flyer is arriving on pad Charlie, the young woman said to her commander and saluted. Thank you, Sergeant Kohler. Keer returned the salute, and the female soldier sharply turned and returned to her duties. As she watched, the flyer hovered a moment, then landed on its mark. Perfectly. She would normally have been impressed by the landing, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She couldn't help but wonder why she had been summoned. To her knowledge, only one person had ever been summoned like this, and he is still in prison. What could she have done? Colonel Keer Azan had been summoned to the war staff. That meant she did something wrong. Right? But what? They sent a grav flyer to scoop her up from the battlefield and bring her to meet with the war staff. The trip from her duty location in the field to the capital's center took nearly 2 hours in a grav flyer, giving her time to think. She is a frontline commander. A damn good one, too. She had not lost a battle since taking over this command, and her casualty count is lower than the body counters use in their statistics. No, she rethought her battle strategies for the past year or so, and nothing stood out as improper. She had succeeded in stopping aggression by all enemy combatants and saved countless lives on both sides. What could they want? The flight engineer gestured to her that the craft was safe to approach, and she quickly walked and hopped into the seat next to the door. Her favorite spot to sit on the mostly silent aircraft. Leaving the door open, she harnessed herself in. The only enlisted crew member, the flight engineer, handed her a headset and she put it on. In her ears, she heard the other 3 on the flyer talking: pilot, co-pilot, and FE. As the craft launched, she had forgotten the vertical speed, and inwardly she was shocked, but externally there was no indication that she did not expect it. Her ability to hide her emotions when needed is something she works on every day. The flyer's side door was fully open, and the air was brisk, refreshing against her face. She was bundled in the typical winter battle dress, so she was warm enough. She looked out the open side of the craft at the mountains that blocked the enemy from her home and the capital city. A memory sparked. Before the war, as a freshly minted second lieutenant, she had completed her survival training in those mountains. That was a long time ago. Summer and winter training, actually. It was a fond memory. She lived in those hills for nearly a month, twice, once as a new lieutenant, and once as a captain. The team of 4 undergoing survival training had the same rank and skill level. They were dropped off in a craft similar to the one she was currently traveling in, and each was given a knife, fine steel cable, flint and steel, a waterproof container of matches, a water filter, and a canteen. They had enough rations to last a week, but they would be there 4 times that long, meaning they needed to locate an alternate food and water source. They survived and did well. Shelter, water, heat, and food were abundant if you knew where to look. They did. The flyer dropped slightly, turbulence pulling her from the past to the present. She looked at the mountains again, hoping to return to where she was, but a nagging thought occurred to her. While she was in that training, they explored the area, several kilometers in all directions. They had a month after all. She located a path up the side of the mountain range, an elevation gain of 1/2 kilometer. She remembered that, as she crested the path, she saw the capital city, maybe 30 kilometers away. But there was also a huge and very dense forest at the mountain's base on the city side of that path, on her country's side of those mountains. Back then, the country was much larger, but since the war raged on, more and more were being taken in battles. The battle is getting uncomfortably close to that mountain range, her survival training area. Thinking about it now, that would be the perfect place to stage an enemy attack on the capital city. It would take everyone by surprise. She also knew a nearby mountain, at about the same level and in direct view of the path, that held an extensive cave system where a lookout could be placed to watch the path. This route needed to be protected, or, at a minimum, watched. "Colonel, we are ready to land at the War Center," a voice over the headset told her. "Thank you, Major. Smooth flight. You gave me." "My pleasure, ma'am. Do you know why there's all this fuss about getting you here like this? You must be someone they need advice from." He smiled through his words. You could feel the humor in his voice. "No clue. All I figure is that I screwed up so bad, they want to tell me in person." The co-pilot and flight engineer on the craft smiled when she said that. Of all the colonels in the command, she was a favored leader. You always knew where you stood, and she let you know if you did your job. She gave you your assignment and let you do your work. She was interested in thinkers and doers, not in lemmings. They landed, and she exited the craft. She stepped a few meters away and turned to the crew, watching her through the windshield. She saluted them, a thank you for the ride. All three of them saluted her back. Finishing her salute, she ended with a thumbs-up gesture. The crew members smiled at the gesture. She turned and went into the building. As she entered the building, a woman greeted her. "Colonel, I am Second Lieutenant Josephine Damiani. I am assigned as your liaison while you are in the facility." Colonel Azan stopped and looked at the woman. Up and down. "Okay, Josephine. How long have you been a butterbar?" She smiled. "Well, Colonel, today marks my second anniversary, so 2 weeks." She grinned. "And Colonel, only my mother called me Josephine. To the world, I am Finn." "Well, Finn, it seems we will get along well." "One more tiny thing, ma'am." Finn looked at the weapon holstered to the front of her body on her left side. "If you promise me you'll look after this, I'll hand it to you." "With my life, Colonel." Keer removed the weapon and holster and handed it to Finn, who placed it in a small metal briefcase she carried. Once it was latched and locked, Finn gestured into the elevator. "Colonel, after you." They entered the car, and Finn hit the bottom button. A light illuminated, and she looked into a spot on the glass. The elevator started to drop fast. "Retinal scan?" Finn nodded. A moment later, Keer opened her mouth wide. My ears popped. As the doors opened, they were in near darkness. "Yes, ma'am. I love that part." Finn walked out, and Colonel Azan followed. Finn knew where they were heading. Down a hall, she gestured to a door. "You not coming in?" "No, ma'am. They need you in there alone. The briefing is classified, and although I have clearance, I do not need to know." Keer opened the door and walked into the room. It was darker than the hallway she had just left, but her eyes adapted quickly. Every single person in the room was a general and above or equivalent. She came to a stop at a podium that blocked her path. "Colonel, you are here to answer questions. If you answer honestly and to our satisfaction, it will go in your favor." Keer thought to herself, shoes off, coals are hot. Now, let's go for a walk. Colonel Azan exited the room by the same door she had entered, and Finn was still waiting. She stood there for more than an hour. "Finn, with me. I need an empty room." Without saying a word, Finn started walking and entered a small room. It had a bed, sink, and closet. Keer realized it was a tiny stateroom. She looked at the closet, which had no doors, and the Class A uniform jacket, which had butter bars on the epaulets. "Is this your room?" "Yes, Colonel. It was the fastest and most secure, quiet place I could think of that fast." "Thank you." Finn sat on the bed, and Keer sat on the comfy chair. They talked quietly about a few things that happened in the room. The questions they asked were very odd. Finn showed her where she stored the pistol. Each room had a safe, and she placed Keer's pistol in it. It lay next to Finn's pistol. Chambers open. Magazines removed. Since the war began, firearms have been standard issue for any uniform. However, carrying a weapon in this building was limited to the security detachment. Roughly 40 minutes after she sat in that comfy chair, the wristband on Finn chimed. "Colonel, they are ready for you again, in the big room." "Well, let's get this over with. I guess it's time to pay the piper. If they didn't like my replies, maybe you'll be my boss." She winked at Finn, who smiled back. Finn knew something, the real reason she was here, but could not say anything. That's for sure. Together, they walked to the same door as earlier, and Keer walked in, thinking she was about to get busted in rank or worse. As she entered, the door closed. A man in the dark spoke. "Colonel, it seems you have a benefactor. The president likes you and your ideas. In essence, you win. Battles, skirmishes, and in his mind, he thinks you can win this war. Sir, in a war, no one wins." The general speaking chuckled a moment, then continued. "True enough. But to that end, he feels you are the right person to take us into a wave of peace." She had no idea what to reply. "Lieutenant, bring the box." Finn walked over to him, and the general slowly opened the box. They walked over to Colonel Azan and stopped. Keer thought to herself, it was such a pretty box for handcuffs. From somewhere else in the room, attention to orders. The President of North Territory, acting upon the recommendation of the Secretary of the Combined Military, has placed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, integrity, and abilities of Colonel Keer Azan. Because of these special qualities and her demonstrated potential to serve in the next higher grade, Colonel Keer Azan is promoted to the grade of Brigadier General, effective this date, by order of the Secretary of the Combined Military. Finn set the box on the podium and removed the eagle from her collar, and the general replaced it with a star. He took a step back, and he and Finn saluted her. She returned the salute. "General Azan," he said to her, "welcome to the war room." At that moment, the lights all came on, and the room had maybe 25 generals and a sprinkling of lieutenants and captains. "Keer, it would help if you had an aide, mainly someone who can wrangle you and your schedule. We chose a brand new second lieutenant, Finn Damiani, for that role, and by the way, this is the first she has heard about it." "Well, if I need a handler," she smiled at Finn. "She seems to be a good one." A woman approached. "Keer, my friend, welcome. I get to administer your oath." Keer Azan took the oath. "Doris, it has been a while." Keer turned to Finn. "She was my first boss when I was a second lieutenant. Everything I learned from her." Doris said, "Now you can pass it on to Finn. Be nice to her, Keer. I like her." "Yes, ma'am." They hugged and dismissed all the aides. She was led to her seat around the table. "Now, we need to talk about the future and how to end hostilities." A little over 18 months ago, she walked into this chamber as a colonel and walked out as a general. The discussions have been long and heated. They had no insight, no clue what the enemy was doing or might do. Her ideas and strategies brought victory in a few battles, and with the selective deployment of the X-4, which she had great faith in, she saved many lives and properties from rocket attacks. General Keer Azan walked with a purpose. Followed by a staff sergeant carrying a backpack, she navigated the halls expertly and walked into the small break area where the aides gathered, and the place got quiet. Generals did not often drop in. They called, and the aide came to them. She walked up to Finn and stopped. Finn stood in front of her boss, out of reflex. Keer handed a sheet of paper to a captain standing close. "Read this, please, out loud." He did, and was a little choked up reading it. Keer removed the butter bars from Finn's uniform and replaced them with silver bars. "These bars were mine." "Do right by them," she said. We'll talk later after the next session with the old people. I will need a drink by then, and I assume you will also. She snapped her fingers, and the sergeant walked in with 3 bottles of champagne. She turned and left, bringing the sergeant with her. Okay, as you were. She waved and said as she walked out of the room, adding, and I don't see anything. She walked out. The sergeant followed after her, and he shut the door. The room erupted with laughter and congratulations. Thank you for the assist, Sergeant. Hang on to the backpack. There is a bottle in there for you to share as a thank you. You're dismissed. He saluted her and walked off. General Azan, are you trying to tell us you believe the mountains will be how the enemy infiltrates, invades us? General Wayne. You could feel the frustration in her voice. After more than a year of their dismissal of her ideas, it was coming to a head. That is exactly what I am telling you. If we do nothing, we can lose this war. If we lose this war because you are not listening to what I am telling you, where will you place the blame? She knew she had ruffled a lot of feathers in these past years, but she was adamant that the mountain path she knew was a back door. For nearly 3 years, she has been working with these dinosaurs, stuck in their ways, battle tactics that the enemy read in books as a child. She knew and was about to propose a solution. Her friend and former boss, General Doris Mackenzie, spoke, Keer, we know you have feelings, and they are mostly correct. You have the strategic knowledge, and as you have done so often, the forces will be fought back. But how can we repel a force from that direction? The mountains. It would take several brigades to watch for the enemy, and then, if we are fortunate, we could stop their advance. Internally, she grinned. Outwardly, she appeared hardened. She knew precisely what General Azan had in mind. She stopped by Keer's stateroom last night and confirmed the plan, and that Keer would present it to the generals today. One thing left to do is give Keer the floor to present her plan to save their country, or as she put it last night, to save their collective asses. I suppose you have some thoughts on this? Keer lowered her head for a moment and looked at the table. This was the opening she had waited for, and she stood from her seat and walked to the front of the room. Generals, my plan is quite simple. An all-volunteer squad of 10 specialists finds a secluded spot to watch a specific path in the mountains. As sure as I am standing here, this is where they will invade from. Just over the hill, at the mountain's base, is a forest large enough to hide a great number. A force large enough to take the city in the dead of night. The battle will be lost before it is fought. They will be less than 50 kilometers from where we are standing. The squad I propose will have what is needed for their assignment, but it should be all completed before the next cold snap sets in. No one spoke. She had proposed this or something similar a few months ago, and they laughed. This time, they were all silent. They had the idea that she might be correct. Keer. We have had reports of scouts in the area where you are talking about, and although I still firmly believe you are nuts and the attack will come from the south near the power facilities, I will approve your listening post plan. She relaxed, but felt like the other shoe was about to drop. If I approve this, you will be the leader of that squad, and before you say anything, I want you out there for a few reasons. 1. To make damn sure your plan is implemented as you think. 2, to give you a chance to get back in the field after almost 4 years. And 3, to get you out of my hair. Keer and several others smiled as he rubbed his bald head. I accept, Keer replied quickly. In that case, what do you need regarding personnel and equipment? Doris asked. Keer spoke confidently. 6 highly skilled sergeants, a major to be in command of the squad with demolition expertise, a captain with a background in intelligence, and a first lieutenant to run communications. She paused momentarily. As for equipment, I have that here. She held up a sheet of paper. The list is not long, but it is rather unique. General Marcus Wayne added, How will you get people to volunteer for this fool's mission? Before anyone could say anything, Sir, I volunteer to be the communications officer on this fool's mission, Finn said sharply. Before the general could say anything, Sir, I volunteer to act as an intelligence officer and liaison to those in this room. General Wayne said, You are my aide. Why would you do this? The captain said, May I speak freely, sir? The general squinted and replied, Yes. Sir, I have seen this woman, speak her mind and was dismissed many times by those in his room. I have also witnessed her correct many more times than she was wrong. If I were a betting man, I would bet on her. So, I request to be on her squad. Doris spoke. Keer, my friend, it seems you made an impression. Now, you need a major and 6 soldiers. I take it you have an idea about those also. Yes, I do. They discussed the mission for another half hour. The group left for the evening. Dinner time. Captain, Lieutenant, let's go talk. She winked. Dinner is on me. The 3 walked into the chow hall and went to an already occupied table. The occupant had just sat and was about to begin his meal. He looked at the 3 and put his utensils on the plate. Looking at the general, he said, This can't be good. Keer said, Major Ramsey E-Committee, you already know me, and this is Finn Damiani and Captain Marvin Manel. We need you and your squad. He sat back in his chair, looking at the 3, rubbed his forehead. General, it never fails. Whenever I talk to you, I get a headache. But always, always, you have something interesting to give my life purpose. Finn and Marvin smiled. Finn said, You get the headaches too? Ramsey replied, I do. Right around my temples. That's the spot, all right, Finn replied. Keer shook her head and laughed. Ramsey said, Grab some chow, let's talk. "45 days ago, she proposed the new assignment. Well, today is the day. Mission start, General Keer Azan said to the reflection in the mirror. She dressed in a field uniform. It has been a while, old friend, she said as she looked at her reflection in the mirror. She laced her father's holster around her arms and strapped the bottom to the belt near her left hip. She walked to the safe in her room, entered her code, and opened the door. She removed the pistol, inserted the magazine, and racked the slide. Placing her thumb on the hammer, she lowered it and pulled it back to the first notch, the safety notch. She looked at it, remembering that this was the pistol she had received from her father in his will. She removed the magazine and inserted another round. Most people no longer carry the 5.7 by 28 millimeter pistol, considered too old by current standards. She knew she would never need to use it because if it came to it, that meant her position was overrun. She secured the pistol in the holster, worn on the left side of her chest. She was tall enough so the holster did not rub against her breast. She inserted the 3 extra magazines in the slots and verified that they were correct. One last check in the mirror. She laughed. 4 magazines. If I need to use 88 rounds of ammunition, nope, 89 rounds of ammunition. She remembered she had one in the chamber. Something is wrong. She wore the gun as a tribute to her father and his service. This is the first time anyone in this facility has seen it aside from Finn on the first day she arrived. She left her stateroom and walked to the right for a few minutes. Stopping, she knocked on a door. General, perfect timing, Finn said. I love that pistol. Antique? Yes, it was my father's service weapon. Captain Marvin Manel joined them as they headed to the Grav Flyer port. General, your parent was in the 48th? He asked. How did you know? That weapon was standard issue to officers. My mother was in the 48th, and I also have her service pistol. I did not wear it because I did not know if it was permitted. Do you have it here? Yes, ma'am. It is in the safe in my room. Well, go get it. Consider it authorized to wear. Without another word, he took off. A few minutes later, they arrived at the port. 4 grav flyers sat on the apron, 1 for people, 3 for equipment. Captain Manel joined them a minute later, and a duplicate of the pistol she wore was on his right hip. He looked proud of it. General Mackenzie joined them. I see you have your father's pistol. It looks good on you. Keer handed her friend an envelope. They stood alone at the moment. Not what you think. It is a promotion request for Finn. Captain will suit her well. She is a fine officer and a fantastic aide, at least for the past 4 years. Once it is approved, and I know it will be, send it in code to the captain. He will decode it and let me know privately, and I will promote her to the permanent rank of captain. I figure it will take a month or 2 to filter through the red tape. Understood. Be safe and do your job. Yes, ma'am. Keer took a step back and saluted. Her friend saluted her back, then hugged her. She headed to the grav flyer, jumped into the open seat, her seat, donned a headset a female sergeant handed her, and said into the mic, "All ready. Flight at your discretion." She heard in her headset, "Flight. This is Major Cody, by the numbers." Cargo 1 launching, and the first craft launched. Cargo 2 launching. Cargo 3 away. All cargo is in the air. We are at flight level 11 and on course. The major said into the mic, "Taxi service launching. We will be with you in 45 seconds." A minute later, the 4 craft flew in a diamond formation. They were heading for the top of a mountain. They stood atop the mountain, and the memories flooded back to her. "Major, around that bend a few feet, you'll see an opening on your right. It goes in and slopes down. I leave setting up our new home away from home to you and your sergeants." "Yes, ma'am." He was about to salute her, and she added, "If you call me General or ma'am, that's okay. If you salute randomly, we will talk. Am I clear?" A resounding, "Yes, ma'am." Finn, Mar, with me. They walked around the corner she mentioned and into a cave. There was a slight upward incline, then it leveled off again a few meters before a downward grade. As she walked deeper, they found side rooms. She kept walking and emerged from the caves onto a small open area. The 3 of them have binoculars with night vision capability. They needed them at the moment since it was just before 2200 hours. The 3 scanned the terrain and trees in front and well below them. "Clear," said Mar. "Clear," said Keer. "I don't see nothing," Finn said. The other 2 just looked at her and grinned. They knew she did it on purpose. "Captain, get the net. The 3 of us can string it up to conceal the opening here. This can be the lookout." At about midnight, the inside of the cave system was set up. Communications and intel were on one side of the room, and the other side was large enough for them to set up their sleeping area. General Azan had another room as an office and a sleeping area. All sergeants or staff sergeants, the major, and the 6 soldiers took a central room. Weapons, munitions, bunks, and other random equipment lined the walls of these makeshift quarters. Everyone had a cot, a mattress, and a sleeping bag. Plus, they brought any personal gear in their packs. Keer walked out to the location where the flyers landed. A female soldier was standing watch. She came to attention. "Relax. What's the scoop?" "Well, General, they are emptying the last of the craft, and tomorrow evening, the munitions you requested will be here. Do you know where we will store it?" "I do. You're the FE on that bird I flew in on, right?" "Yes, ma'am." "Can I let you in on a little secret?" The woman nodded to the general. "I like being a general. It means I don't have to unload a grav flyer and set up the camp." They both laughed for a moment. Keer grabbed a stick and sat on a small rock. "Okay, here's the plan. I'll let you pass this on to your boss." She drew a large square in the dirt. "This is our location. And this is a very large area on the enemy side of the base of this mountain. In the center of the square, the bombs will go. In a sequence, the smaller mines will herd the enemy into the center. Where the big boys are planted? Exactly. Damn, ma'am, I like you. You're devious. Thank you. General. I heard most of that. Can I make a suggestion? She nodded. The major stood over the drawing. The path you mentioned, that's over this way. About half a kilometer up from the base of the hill. Let's embed AP mines in the walls and set them to detonate from top to bottom and trigger them by someone reaching the top. I like that, Major. Can you take care of that? I can. We will receive the munitions tomorrow. I'll request a few hundred anti-personnel mines. Well, I do have a blank check. When are the flyers heading home? The sergeant voiced up. Less than an hour. She looked at the major. Once they head home, gather everyone in your quarters. It's the biggest area. Let's call it briefing time. An hour later, she heard the hum of the flyers launching. She was in the comm room with Mar and Finn. Grab a chair and follow me. They did. They went into the large room and someone called the room to attention. Keer Azan, a general, stopped dead in her tracks. Okay. I have no idea who did that, and I don't want to know. But the next one that does will dig a new latrine for each of us. Clear? In unison, with a few chuckles. Yes, ma'am. Finn, you're up. She stood and handed each person a small cup. A moment later, she started from the beginning, the general, and filled each cup about halfway. No one drank until everyone had theirs. The general stood. Everyone followed. Friends, roommates, we are a single group for the next 6 months. Let's toast to a successful mission. To the mission, the major and captain responded, and the rest of the team followed suit. They drank. Now, for why we are here. The major looked at her. Excuse me, General. Any more of that hooch left? Hooch. That's 18-year-old Scotch. Yes, ma'am, I know. If I had thought about it, I could probably tell you about the maker and the year. But it is rather tasty. They both laughed. Major set the rules. She grinned at him. If I like what you say, I may give you a refill. In that case, she is general or ma'am. I am major or boss. He is captain or cap. And she is lieutenant or LT. Ma'am or sir works for any of us. What you call each other is up to you. As for protocol, forget it. Here, we are one group. We live here, we work here, and we sleep here. If you get a little snuggly, find a secluded place outside. The rest of us may not have a snuggle buddy, so there is no need to flaunt it. Now, the important question is, who brought adult beverage? Everyone raised their hand, including the general, the captain, the major, and the lieutenant. Perfect. Once a week, we can get together, and you can share one at a time. That cup is plastic. Keep it safe. He turned to Keer. General, did I miss anything? Nope. Get some sleep, and tomorrow we will assign shifts and duties. Specialties? The major started. I am Major Ramsey Eco-Midi. I'm a people person. Once the laughing stopped, I'm Captain Marvin Manel, Mar for short. And if any of you want to call me Mar, it is fine with me. My specialty, okay, is that I have an extensive connection to a bird in orbit and can watch a circle at 200 kilometers. I am privy to things most people never hear, and I greatly like this scotch. The lieutenant. I am First Lieutenant Josephine Damiani. You can all call me Finn or LT, whatever is easier for you. As for me, communications. A few terminals will be set up in the comm room tomorrow, and you can check your messages. But please remember this assignment is classified. If you send someone a message, it will appear that it originated from the base. All of our inbound and outbound messages are being reviewed. The general said, I don't know nothing, and I can prove it. They all laughed. Okay, you six. And I'll let you all in on this little thing we're doing when you finish. I am Staff Sergeant William Maxwell. Call me Max. Specialty. Well, I'm the grunt. Sniper, munitions, and covert ops. Staff Sergeant Rita Maxwell. Call me Maxie. Specialty, X4. The general asked, "You two related?" Expecting spouses or something. Max replied, "Yep, her mom and my mom are twin sisters." Maxie added, "Max and I were born 5 minutes apart. Different days, different months, different years." The captain laughed. "Really? New Year's Eve and New Year's Day?" "Correct. Give that man another drink." "Excellent." "Who's older?" the LT said. Max pointed to Maxie. "Cool. Next." Sergeant Dakota Bukowski. Call me Bo. Specialty, Mark II and Mark VI. Staff Sergeant Cam Ngo. Call me Gogo. Specialty, Mark II and Mark VI. Sergeant Felipe Reynaldo Esteban Diaz. Call me Fred. Specialty, well, I'm the grunt. Sniper and covert ops, like Max. We went through school together, but I'm the better shot. Max laughed and said, "By 2 millimeters." The major added, "Now I get it, Fred. The first letter of all your names." Fred gave him a thumbs up. 2 millimeters. What range? Half a kilometer. Damn! He pointed to the next person. Sergeant Virginia Rolfe. Call me Tiny. Specialty, X4. She stood slightly over 2 meters tall, a few centimeters taller than the general. Sergeant Sarah Miller. Call me Boom Boom. Specialty, well, I'm the grunt like Max, but also an explosives expert. Enlisted-wise, who is the ranking soldier? The general asked. Max said, "Well, I know that Maxie, myself, and Gogo were all promoted on the same day, and his birthday is in June, so that means Maxie outranks me by 5 minutes." The room laughed. "Maxie, here." She handed the half-filled bottle to her. "Go make friends." Maxie added some to the general's and the other officers' cups, and there was enough in the bottle to refill everyone. There was still a little left in the bottle. "Well, Maxie, your first command decision. What will you do with the tiny amount left in the bottle?" Maxie grinned, put the bottle to her lips, and drained it. The major said in a rather loud voice, "Officer-level thinking." They have been in the caves for a month and a half, and light movement and vehicles have been seen on the other side of the area being watched. There is nothing major so far, but the tree's density is hiding a lot. Even for infrared scans, a somewhat clearer field of view is needed. General Azan was in her office reviewing a few images she received from the good captain. Intel is amazing. It can make or break an operation. Her directive was to gather and filter every shred of intel within a 500-kilometer radius of where she was standing. She has not been disappointed. A few days ago, they saw a large convoy of trucks moving east. That is their direction, and she thinks the time is getting close. A soldier in a battle uniform stood in the doorway and cleared his throat. This area had no doors, and it wasn't easy to have doors in a cave. Although he had no rifle, all in the detachment carried a personal sidearm. It was worn on his left thigh, just below his hip. "General Azan, there is a message for you in communications," the soldier said, standing just inside the door. When he finished speaking, the general turned to him. "Thank you," she said, and he saluted. The general returned the salute, shaking her head. Sergeant Maxwell executed the perfect about-face and left the office. General Keer Azan was not consumed with military protocol, nor was she steeped in traditions. Her command of this tiny outpost had a purpose. She knew. She knew the enemy would attempt to invade her home from this area, this trail, this path. Why? How did she know? Her counterparts on the war staff believed the attack would come from elsewhere, from the direction of military bases, power plants, and commerce. However, the exact direction they were speaking was heavily debated in the war staff briefing room. She, on the other hand, knew. This is where the attack would originate. She proposed assigning a small group to oversee the area covertly. They will hide in the caves and trees, watching, waiting. The war staff, of which she is the newest member, gave her 9 people to appease her and get her out of the war room. They made it her assignment. Her squad was by volunteer only. It was a 6-month assignment, classified at the bronze level. 2 companies were her backup, in case she was right. They gave her everything she requested. The other generals grew tired of her relentless creativity. In the 18 months since her elevation to general, she had seen several enemy incursions and stopped them well before they were a danger. Her counterparts discussed it to death, and she took action. It was the proper action, and the job was done. They had a communications room in the cave and maintained constant contact with their base. They brought everything with them in the initial drop, so they had food for 7 months. Water was abundant. Since the thaw began, the cave walls have been dripping with it. Filtration and storage are automated, ensuring sufficient clean water is available. A makeshift shower was set up at the mouth of the cave, and Boom Boom maintained the schedule. As she entered the communications room, the on-duty lieutenant handed her the note. She smiled after reading it. They think I'm crazy being out here on a fool's errand. They wanted me to retire or shut up, but I want to do my job and protect our homes, families, and people. She paused a moment. She realized she had said all that out loud and looked at the lieutenant. Finn, am I crazy? Yes, ma'am. There was a brief pause, and Keer waited for First Lieutenant Finn Damiani to continue. You are crazy, because you know, in your bones, what will happen. You are crazy to second-guess yourself, General. I have been with you and learning from you since I was a freshly minted butter bar, and I can tell you that you have an insight I have never seen before. If you say they are coming through this area, then by the gods, we will sit with you and wait for them to arrive. We have only been here 58 days. She pointed to the cave wall, a makeshift calendar, and smiled. Keer smiled at her, and she continued, Ma'am, I am your aide. I was with you in the war room when they dismissed your ideas. I stood in the back of the room, listening to them decide to rid themselves of your ideas and tell you what they intended. It allowed you to create this team with the equipment needed to ensure victory. They gave you this detail, this squad, this duty to get you out of their hair. The general was about to speak, but Finn continued. General Azan smiled at her aide, who was also a friend. Ma'am, this is not the normal posting for a general. I see one of 2 reasons they did this. 1, to get you and your radically new ideas out of the war staff area. And 2, they hope you are correct and unable to continue as a member of the war staff. The general smiled. She understood that point number 2 was the general's demise. Thinking briefly, she may be correct. Do the other generals want me dead? Ah, sweet talk. What is it you want? Finn grinned. Well, the rank of captain would be a nice pay bump. The general laughed. Let me look into it. She left the room and returned to the hidden spot just outside the cave, where the eyes of those on lookout watched the trees, the fields, and the grassland. Their vantage point was very well hidden and nearly half a kilometer above the ground near a trail, the only trail that would find its way to the end of the invasion. General Keer Azan was promoted to general at the protest of several of the generals on the war staff. Her promotion to general was the direct result of the president's recommendation, due in no small part to her military and strategic insight. She has the uncanny ability to see things that no one else can see and stop an enemy's advance nearly before it starts. In the war staff, her comments were dismissed and her ideas and recommendations were shot down. In her battles as a colonel, she had never lost. She felt the enemy, their plans, their resolve. She knew, deep in her person, what they would do and devised creative, imaginary ways to stop them. Those under her command did not question her tactics because it was proven time after time that they worked. perfectly. The loss of life on both sides was minimal and near zero on the side of the general. This was no different. She saw a potential back door and needed to close and lock that door. But the war staff, her fellow generals, thought her to be a loose cannon. They assumed she was fabricating an elaborate attack for her own personal glory. She knew differently. She was not wired like that. Her counterparts had that wiring epoxied into their being. "Ma'am, something is not right," a young man said. She walked toward him. "Please be a bit more specific." "I'm not sure I can, but there is, or was, a huge tree that I have been using as a landmark to review the area assigned to me. That tree is gone. It towered above the area, easy to see." She looked at the screen behind him. "Zoom in to where you believe the tree is, or was, located." He did, and they saw movement. It was impossible to refine to see who was there, but there was definite movement. They also saw the tree. It was lying on the ground. "Sergeant, good work. Get a Mark 6, and let's take a better look." As he set up the high-resolution camera, the general asked how far the tree was from them. The sergeant replied, "About 25 kilometers." He paused a heartbeat. "I believe the tree was also obstructing their view of the trail. It looks like they removed the tree during the night." At 25 kilometers away, with the nocturnal sounds around their position, the tree coming down could easily have been missed. 10 people were in these caves: the general, a major in charge of the soldiers, a captain in charge of intelligence, a lieutenant in charge of communications, and 6 soldiers. 4 females and 6 males. "Major, please tell me our welcome gifts are all in place and ready." "Yes, ma'am. A square kilometer of what you see down there will disappear when it begins." The screen of the Mark 6 shows the Ring of Death, as the major refers to it. "I hate war," the general said, correcting her statement. "Don't get me wrong, I enjoy the battles for their strategic game. It's the destruction I dislike. Property, real estate, people, and why? Because someone wants to own what is not theirs. My father taught me a lot about the art of war and how to be fresh and new on the battlefield. Do the unexpected, he told me. But more so, he instilled in me that soldiers die with each action from those in command. I'm not fond of the fact that people want to destroy us. But I'll be damned if I will let them do it." She looked the major directly in the eye. "Major, the explosions are a sequence, right? Tell me again." "Correct. Initiated by the enemy reaching the top of the mountain, once the trail is cleared, they begin on the left and right of the area in front of us to move the enemy into the center. It will appear as if they are taking on mortar fire. They go back and forward, throwing them off guard until they are in an area designated by the red circle." He pointed to an overlay on the screen as the simulated explosions were displayed. "Finally, a huge set of explosives are set off simultaneously, deleting a large portion of the troops hell-bent on destroying us." He briefly paused, returning to the explosives on the path. "The trail up the mountain is peppered with AP mines in the walls on either side of the path, triggered by one of them reaching the first mine at the top. Once it goes, the rest of the mines are set off at 1.5-second intervals. It will be a clusterfuck on the trail. It is too narrow for 3 to stand side by side, and at some point, the path narrows to a single person. As the anti-personnel mines reach the bottom of the trail, the farthest left and right explosions begin, herding them into the center where 2 2,000-pound bombs are buried and primed, awaiting the signal to detonate. The sequence is automated and finishes within 20 minutes of starting. I despise killing, and this is wholesale killing. But in the game of them or us, I choose us every time." She paused, turning to the intelligence officer. "Captain, notify command once we have a clear image of the invasion force. Major, are you all set? Where are the mines on the trail placed?" "They are a meter off the ground and at a 45-degree angle. This is to maximize destruction. Some will be killed instantly, and a great many others will be injured and maimed. Injured and maimed, taking two out to help one off the field of battle, not knowing they are all heading back into hell itself, less than 10 minutes later. Ma'am, the Mark 6 is ready. She hit the switch. Flipping it between its views, they set it to infrared, and the life in the trees came into view more than anyone could imagine. The screen shows thousands of heat sources advancing on the trail that leads to the path through the mountains and home. Over the hill was a dense forest, the perfect place to hide an invasion force. Less than an hour's walk to the capital city's outskirts and half a day away from the war staff, feeling safe and secure in the sub-basement of the main building at Shriver. Keer smiled as she realized those generals would need to be rescued if they got through. The captain pressed a button on the display and a number appeared. 18,000. Ma'am, he said as the number appeared. I see it. 18,000 individual heat signatures. Tell those idiots at home what we found. Also, make certain they know we are ready for them. Captain Marmanel turned and left, heading directly to communications. The lookouts knew the first soldiers would trip the mine at the top of the path in less than half an hour. They waited. The general said, "Set up the X4." Everyone wondered why they had an X4 at this location, but no one questioned that the general had explicitly asked for it by name. Keer turned to the major and spoke quietly. You may not have known, but when I was a captain, I was on the team that designed and tested a series of anti-missile lasers. The X4 was the final prototype and eventually the production model. I know this device intimately. It was a nearly 3-year period of my career as the interface designer and primary tester. The first time they launched 6 missiles, minus 95% of the onboard explosives directly at my position, was rather nerve-wracking. But the X4 performed flawlessly. I removed all 6 from the sky in less than 10 seconds. 6 shots. My interface was hailed as a success, and I was promoted to major in record time. The X4 has been deployed all over our country and protects our citizens like an umbrella, stops the rain from hitting you. The major grinned. I did not know that, ma'am. It's good to know you were once one of us. You know, a grunt. Major, we are all soldiers. I hope none of us need to make the ultimate sacrifice. As for the X4, firing it is a pleasure. It makes me feel like, well, like a captain again. I understand. As a captain, others are responsible, but as the general, you are responsible. I do know that feeling. He looked around since he was responsible for the soldiers at this outpost, including the general herself. I also like to train with those under my command. I tell them they will regret it if they hold back on me. How did that turn out? She asked. Let's just say I have learned a few new things for hand-to-hand combat. Some were a painful lesson, and the soldiers who knocked me on my ass and taught me those new lessons usually have the biggest smiles on their faces. He paused for a heartbeat, rubbing his chin. Ah, simpler times. It was a strange request to set up the X4, but they complied. There were no incoming rockets, and none were expected. The soldiers set up the Extreme Range Defense System, a new weapon designed for long-range engagements. It was a laser with a range of 100 kilometers, used to intercept incoming missiles. The targeting system consisted of a screen, a high-resolution camera, and a green dot indicating where the laser energy would strike. The difference between the dot and the strike is less than 30 millimeters. In other words, if targeted, it kills. General Keer Azan targeted the area beyond the field of death and began to zoom in. She found what she was looking for, her counterpart. He is clear as day on the screen. The screen is painted with a red overlay, preventing the operator from firing at an organic target. The major and the sergeant knew this would happen. General Azan entered a code into the keypad, and the red overlay disappeared, increasing the image's clarity to its maximum. The sergeant said, I did not know it would do that. Keer smiled at him. One press, and he would no longer be in command. Cold-blooded murder, or the result of war. They were the aggressors. She would do nothing until the first mine detonated. Then, one by one, she would remove those in command. She would get several shots in the confusion before they realized what was happening. She spoke to no specific person. One of the alternate roles of the X4 is highly classified and coded. As far as you can zoom in, it can be used as a sniper rifle. There is no report from the firing, and the 50-millisecond firing time means you will most likely remain hidden for your first few shots. The slight flash is not noticeable in daylight unless you look directly at it. At night, it's like a beacon. If they had a camera facing this location, they would see the momentary flash as the laser fired. "General, may I ask a very off-the-wall question?" She looked at the young woman, intrigued, standing on the lookout to her left. "Sure, why not?" "Your name, Keer Azan, seems like a mix of cultures." "Correct. I was born in Ireland to parents of mixed heritage. My father is from India and my mother is Irish, so I traveled all over, following my father's work, and we ended up not far from here. Culturally, it was a very odd mix, but I enjoyed every minute of it." She glanced at the soldier who asked the question. Keer is Irish for dark. Azan means justice. She paused momentarily and looked at the soldier. "A fitting name for me in this situation." "Thank you, ma'am. Dark justice is fitting." "No, thank you for bringing me a little clarity now. I know what needs to be done to stop the aggression on our side of the mountain and protect those at home." Keer Azan stood a bit over 2 meters tall, with jet black hair, green eyes, and a light complexion, yet her face looked like that of a Cleopatra descendant. She was 100% confident in everything she did, and 100% certain she would win this battle and, hopefully, avoid a full-scale war. "Tally-ho," someone said flatly, meaning the enemy had reached the path. There were 10 points up the path, with number 1 being the point of trigger for the mines. Less than half a kilometer, and the carnage would begin. Keer started feeling sorry for them, but this was her plan. She created this means of protecting the home front. She knew this area well. As a new officer, she completed her survival training during the summer and winter. She thought this was the most beautiful wilderness she had ever seen. She never realized that she would destroy it one day. They carried all the explosives, the mines, and the date cord needed to do what needed to be done. The most complex and most anxiety-driven day was burying the 2 bombs. Thankfully, they completed it between sunset and sunrise so that no one would see them. Point 9. They were progressing up the mountain in hopes of taking her home unopposed. In a very short time, there would be a lot of dead on the hill. One well-placed shot from a rifle would stop them from invading their country, their home. The side explosions were all placed simultaneously, and the additional munitions troops who assisted boarded the grav flyers and went home. The team returned to the cave to watch. A few minutes later, point 8. They would pause and reconsider if she fired a single round at the lead on the trail, missing him but hitting close. Point 7. If she did that, they would find another way to kill those she loved. It had to be this way. They needed to understand that aggression and force would be met with a counterforce. In her mind, this was all justified. She was calm, and she felt at peace about the killing of 18,000 enemies hell-bent on killing her and everyone she knew and loved. She would grieve later for the families and spouses of the fallen enemy combatants. She listened, and when someone said point 3, she retargeted the command area. Point 2. She powered up the X4 to its highest level. The explosions rocked the hills and surrounding lands. Those in the enemy's command area stood, staring at the explosions. Keer pressed the button. Their general dropped, and the vehicle behind him exploded. The laser went through him and detonated the fuel cell. She fired 4 more times, hitting her mark each time. Her 5th shot was directly into the fuel storage area, not realizing it also held their ammunition and explosives. As it detonated with a thunderous sound, the side explosions began. A few minutes later, it was over. She backed away from the X4. As the sound of the explosions quieted, Keer said quietly, providing the opportunity for the enemy to die for their country. She looked at the sergeant who had initially set up the X4. Scan with the X4. Any life down there? The soldier scanned the entire area. There were a few hot spots from the fires, but no one was walking around. Not really, ma'am. No movement. Some are still alive in the border areas, but nothing in the center survived. Major, she said quietly, begin a cleanup. Captain, notify command to send in the waiting brigade to assist. We'll need a lot of body bags. The rest of you, scan for survivors. Walking into the cave a few feet, she opened a radio she had never used. Her superior told her to take it, and they had another in the war staff conference room. If, by some chance, she is right, she can establish good relations or bring peace to the battle. As she switched it on, it lit up and chirped, making a secure and digital connection to its counterpart in the command center of the enemy's war staff. Her war staff would also hear what she says. This is General Keer Azan. I need to speak to your leadership at once. A few minutes passed, and she repeated. Several seconds later, General Azan, this is General Mal. You are using the secure frequency. To what do I owe this call? Her voice lowered, reverent. General Mal, your attacking force has been neutralized. The entire 18,000 of your countrymen have been killed, injured, or captured. Let's stop this madness. We are not looking for a fight. My father taught me, when I was very young, never to start a fight, but always finish it. This battle is finished. She released the mic and waited. The entire attacking force is... His voice trailed off. We are heading into the area now to help those we can help. I invite you to send in unarmed soldiers and medical personnel to retrieve those who are injured. Let's work together and make this a reality. A few minutes later, agreed. I will meet you at the site and we can work together to save as many as we can. Sunrise, northeast corner of the field. I will have coffee for you and we can discuss the situation and anything else you would like. Be advised that a few brigades are looking for and assisting those in need. Medical teams are on site as well. Thank you, General Azan. My aide and I will meet with you, unarmed, under a flag of truce. Till sunrise. He stopped transmitting. A moment later, the standard radio opened and her superiors questioned the wisdom of her meeting with that general, the enemy. She laid into them, telling them what she thought of them, but in such a way that they could not reprimand her. Finally, they agreed with the decision to hold the impromptu meeting. She would find a way to end this with no more loss of life. Finn. Who makes the best cup of coffee? I have a coffee date in the morning and want to ensure I am offering my best. I do, General. I will join you as your aide. I am pretty certain this will be a double date. They smiled at each other. Till morning. Sunrise is at 5:30. Let's meet here at 400. They nodded to each other and the general walked off to her room. She needed a quiet place to be alone. She was responsible for the wounding or death of 18,000 people in less than an hour. She needed to wrap her head around that tidbit so it wouldn't affect her. She reached her room, closed the makeshift door, and sat on the bed. She began to weep for the loss, letting the emotions finally surface. They needed to be released. An hour later, she was fine. Now, she needed to think of a way to end all hostilities, to end the conflict. She needed to broker a lasting peace. Sunrise was just a few hours away. Keer walked into communications, but the room was empty. The next stop was the makeshift kitchen. As she entered, she saw everyone in the room. She grinned. Everyone knew what was happening except for the LT. Coffee! Keer said painfully. Finn turned and handed her a cup. She tasted it. Perfecto. Cap! I hear you received encrypted messages last night. Can you please read them to the group? It would be my pleasure, General. Everyone knew what this was about, so they set their cups on the table. He cleared his throat and smiled. Attention to orders. The President of North Territory, acting upon the recommendation of the Secretary of the Combined Military, has placed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, integrity, and abilities of First Lieutenant Josephine Damiani. Because of these special qualities and her demonstrated potential to serve in the next higher grade, First Lieutenant Josephine Damiani is promoted to the grade of Captain, effective this date, by order of the Secretary of the Combined Military. Finn almost had a kitten. The Major removed her silver bar and Keer replaced it with the Captain's bars. Since everyone was facing Finn, he said, "Room, hand salute." Finn had tears, congratulations and hugs and handshakes. Finn, do you think I want a first lieutenant joining me for this meeting? Well, thankfully, as a captain, they will at least think you know what you are doing. A few minutes later, when things quieted, Mar spoke again loudly. This time, the promotion was from the Major to Lieutenant Colonel. She pinned the new colonel, and again, the room saluted. Finn called it out. They heard a grav flyer landing, but it sounded different. Lower in tone. The colonel sent a team to investigate. They came back with a flight crew. The general said, "Colonel, it appears your team picked up a few strays on the way home." The commander, who grinned at the comment, went to the general. "Ma'am, we are at your disposal. The craft is set up like a conference center. The brass sent you this ship. It appears it will start raining shortly and turn to snow. The general told me to tell you that peaceful communication is always better when you are comfortable." He winked at her. "By the way, the general told me to tell you the cabinets and pantry are, as she said, properly stocked." Everyone understood what that meant. "Message understood, Major. You look familiar. Are you the pilot from that day I got promoted to general?" "Yes, ma'am. My entire crew was on that flight. We have been a team for 5 years now." She looked at the others and smiled. "Well, Major, I didn't get fired." She laughed, as did the Major. "Welcome to my team." "Rancy, find these people a place to bed down." The Lieutenant Colonel replied, "Yes, ma'am." Her team got on the flyer, and the flyer's crew joined them promptly. Keer sat in her typical seat right next to the open side door. The flyer lifted off. She was stuck in her thoughts as she looked at the destruction of that beautiful wilderness she remembered from all those years ago. She felt sad about it. The flight was just a few minutes, and they saw a staff car at their destination. Keer picked up 2 coffees, and Finn picked up the other 2. They hopped out of the grav flyer and headed toward the staff car. The occupants of the car exited and stood there, waiting for them. A power thing. Maybe a little control, Keer thought. Or perhaps she is simply reading into something that should not be read. "General, I am General Keer Azan. This is my aide, Captain Finn Damiani. I hope you both take your coffee black." The enemy general smiled. "We do, thank you." Keer handed a coffee to her counterpart, as did Finn. "I am General Benjamin Mahl, and this is my aide, Captain Tyler Strano." Finn said without thinking. "Strano? Sicilian?" "Yes. How did you know?" "My mother's maiden name is Strano. My family is from Palermo, Sicily." "See that, General," Keer said. "We already have something in common to work with." "General Azan, Keer, may I suggest we call each other by our first names?" "Well, Benjamin." "Please, Ben." She smiled. "Well, Ben. It seems we have our first point, which we both agree on." They clicked their coffee together in a form of salute. Finn and Tyler did the same. "My flyer is set up as a conference center, and I am told it is fully stocked. The 4 of us will retain our weapons and sidearms as a form of mutual respect. But we have a lot of work to do. We have a peace to broker." They walked to the flyer, and as they entered and closed the doors, General Mal sighed. I never liked this war. I disagreed with it at every turn. But you need to know something important. The single individual, our leader, who started this conflict and kept it going all these years, is dead. Keer stopped and stared at him. He was killed by an assassin who vanished into the night after cutting his throat as he slept. He was quite mad. It happened last night. Since that reality has gripped our war staff, we have minimized the conflicts. Also, we have not informed the population about his death. Please treat this information as classified and do not leak it. The conspiracies will begin a mere second later. General Mal reached into a pocket and removed a small radio. Mal, to command. Stand down. We are under a flag of truce. A ceasefire is issued. General Azan walked to her radio, picked up the mic, and said, This is General Azan. All units are to stand down and await further instructions. Cease all hostilities. We are under a truce flag. We are under a ceasefire. Mal and Azan shook hands. Captains, please leave us alone, Keer said. We have discussions we need to do, and two generals yelling at each other may make a captain uncomfortable. Yes, ma'am, both captains said simultaneously. Mal nodded to them both, and they left the flyer. As the captains left the flyer, Finn asked, So, Tyler, tell me about your father's family. Keer looked at Ben as the doors slid closed. See that? They are already becoming fast friends. She smiled. I wonder what food they stocked this thing with. I'm a little hungry. How about you? General Mal nodded. I could eat a little something. They sat, ate, and talked. Peace was in their future. The sky was clear, and the sunlight danced over the city. Children played in parks, stores opened, and customers walked in the streets and into the shops. Light traffic was on the road. Life went on. A digital marquee announced the news. Ceasefire agreement reached. People gathered and murmured about the display. Some cheered, some cried, and some looked shocked. After a decade at war, was it really over? Local radio broadcast the news. After years of conflict, representatives from both nations have agreed to an immediate ceasefire and the beginning of formal peace negotiations. An older man, a veteran, removed his military cap and held it to his chest. It's about damn time. A month has passed, and the peace negotiations were easier than imagined. Both sides are conceding on some items, adamant about others on the table. Both winners. General Wayne stood on the stage of the concert hall. Next to him stood General Doris Mackenzie and the other leader who supported or opposed General Keer Azan, who stood in the center of the gallery looking at the others. General Wayne, clearing his throat, said, I never thought I would say this. Keer jumped in. That worries me. The room went silent, smiles. She added, Can someone please record that? Laughter around the room. Doris added, Already recorded. Wayne said, Don't push it. Keer added, just barely loud enough to hear, Worth a shot. Wayne continued, The president wishes to recognize the effort and sacrifice of the mountain team. A very large display is activated, and one by one, each member of the mountain team is displayed, with only their name and rank. Some had the name, others included their nickname. Wayne said, Without the actions of this group, led by General Azan, this war may have continued for years. Doris added, Or it may have ended very differently. Keer said to herself, They earned this, each of them. The mountain team walked onto the stage and stood next to Keer. The pair of captains on her right, the major, and the sergeants on her left. Rancy said, I hate ceremonies. Boom Boom said, You hate people. Rancy grinned and said, True. The team laughed. The president stepped forward and said, History remembers victories. Pausing, But true history remembers the people who prevented even greater tragedies. He stepped in front of Keer. You fought, you endured, you preserved our nation, and after all that, you chose peace. The room applauded. The president presented each team member with a medal. As the president pinned the medal on Finn, he said, "Your boss speaks highly of you." Finn replied, "That's terrifying." The president laughed, as did each member of the team, including Keer. He moved on with the ceremony, and they had a reception with light food. Keer reserved the officers' club for a final meeting with the team, a private gathering. No cameras, no reporters, no speeches, just the team, her team. Keer reached into a backpack all of them have come to respect, and pulled out a firearm sight. Maxie said, "Is that?" Keer added, "Yes, it is. 18-year-old Scotch." Fred said, "Fucking A." Boom, boom. Now it's a party. Ramsey said, "General, you continue to encourage bad behavior." Keer responded, "Leadership takes many forms." The group laughed. They were more than a unit, more than friends. They were a family. Keer held up her glass. The others followed. "To the mission." They all responded, "To the mission," drinking their salute in the same plastic cup they received on the first day of the mission. A tradition. Soon, assignments will be given. Team members will scatter to new assignments, new lives, new futures. It has been a year since peace was declared, and the flags of both nations fly side by side. General Benjamin Mall approaches the Peace Summit building, no longer the enemy, no longer a threat. Keer meets him at the entrance. Mal speaks. "General, Keer? Good morning, Ben. I hope you had a pleasant weekend." "I did." "You still out saving humanity?" "Just doing my part," Keer replied. Mal looked her in the eye. "I think it is amazing what happens when people stop shooting at each other." "That, sir, is a revolutionary concept." She smiled. "How is your president?" "She is well. It's been a year, and I feel she has finally come to terms with the fact that at the death of the leader, she was destined to take his place and lead us into peace." They walked into the building, Ben handed her a coffee, and they took their seats. A few months later, Keer spent the weekend at their mountain blind. Same mountains, light snowfall, same trail. Nature has begun repairing the damage from the brief battle. Grass has regrown, and young trees can be seen over the cleared area. Life is returning. Keer stands alone at the lookout, staring across the valley. No uniform, no armament, no ceremony, no audience. Just Keer and the mountains. She was there to listen to what they needed to tell her. She placed her hand on her father's pistol. She heard his words in her head. Never start a fight, but always finish it. She smiled and heard him say, "Leadership is the weight of carrying on afterward." She said out loud, "Yes, Dad, I understand." She heard the wind blow, the trees and bushes rustle. It was peaceful and quiet, which is why she was here for 48 hours. She needed to be alone and think. Not about anything important. She talks to herself internally. There were things she needed to say to herself, and they were said, understood, and she agreed. Keer heard in her mind the words of those she knew. The war is over, and but the work is not. As she heard the sound of the grav flyer landing, she said out loud, "Peace needs guardians too." Finn walked onto the lookout. "General, I found you." "Yep, you found me." "You are surprisingly easy to find." "Now, Captain, that is disappointing." Finn said to her booze and friend, "The president is asking for you." Of course he is. Finn grinned. Something about another impossible assignment. Keer groaned. I knew I should have retired. You would be bored to death in 3 days. 3 days! More like 3 hours! They walked back through the cave, reminiscing on their time here. Back toward the grav flyer. Back to whatever comes next. Keer took her place on the grav flyer, strapped in, next to the open door. She said out loud, for this entire crew to hear over the headsets, peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the courage to end it. The grav flyer lifted off and headed toward the city, where people can sleep knowing they are safe.